So this weekend I attended a Road to Nationals event and I managed to do pretty well. I got a top 8 finish, but I did it with Azalea. So in this video we'll be looking at the cards that I chose for my deck, the reasons behind those choices, and the reason why that Azalea will be getting some Living Legend points a bit sooner than we think. Now before we get into the video, please consider subscribing to this channel. I talk about all things Flesh and Blood, we do deck techs, news, all sorts of things. So if you're into Flesh and Blood, then this is the channel for you. Anyways, let's get into the video. So let's take a look at the Azalea hero card and talk about the reasons why I decided to play Azalea. So Azalea has a once per turn action that costs nothing and it has go again. It says put a card from your arsenal on the bottom of your deck. If you do, put the top card of your deck face up into your arsenal. If it's an arrow card, it gains dominate until the end of turn. So you have something in your arsenal, you put it on the bottom of your deck, swap it with the card on top. If it's an arrow, you get dominate for free. This really spoke to me as a Kano player. Now, just a little bit of background into people who play Kano. I don't really think you can main Kano, because if you do, eventually people will figure out how to beat it, your local meta will understand exactly how to get around the arcane damage, and you're just going to be left, you know, slowly losing more games over time. So Kano is kind of like the boogeyman that you learn how to play and you put him in your back pocket and you only bring him out whenever kind of people aren't expecting it or people are underprepared, but it means that you need something in the meantime. So Azalea's ability of playing the top card of your deck essentially really spoke to me as someone who plays Wizard, because that's what Kano does. Kano, you pay 3, you banish the top card of your deck, you can play it as an instant, yada yada. And so yeah, that was exactly what drew me to play Azalea. But I noticed that Azalea wasn't getting a lot of traction. A lot of people were playing Lexi whenever they were looking at Ranger, they were playing some wide builds, playing some ice builds. But ultimately, I think Azalea has value, and I think that Azalea has some Living Legend points on there very, very, very soon. So let's move on to the gear. We'll start with the weapon. So the weapon that I decided to pick is Death Dealer. Now, Death Dealer is probably one of the most controversial choices of the deck. Loads of people wanted to use the new Dreadbore because it would stop playing defense reactions from hand. However, I felt that that wasn't a good choice of the deck because most of the people that I was playing against put their defense reactions in arsenal. So if I'm stopping you from playing something out of your hand, it doesn't really matter. The +1 isn't pushing any damage into critical numbers, i.e. if you're it's not pushing 3 damage to 4 or 6 to 7. Most arrows are going to get to the 7 mark and make people defend with 3 cards anyway. So there wasn't really a need to put on any other bow other than Death Dealer. In my opinion, Death Dealer is the best bow for Azalea because it is a once per turn action that costs 1 resource. It has go again. It says if you have no cards in your arsenal, you can put an arrow from your hand face up into your arsenal, and if you do, draw a card. This entire deck can run a full turn on 1 resource, and that is fantastic value for resources. Even if you get hit with a Frostbite, it still doesn't matter. You can run then on 2 resources. It is such a cheap deck to run. When you activate Death Dealer, you pay your 1 resource, you put a card into your arsenal from your hand, and then you draw another card. If it's a buff, then great, you can go ahead and you can add +3 or +2 or whatever to your arrows. And if it's not, and you need to pay for the arrow, well, you just drew a card that you can now pitch to pay for the arrow that's going to be in your arsenal. That is fantastic value. It allows you to cycle your deck faster so that you have less chance of drawing dead hands with no arrows. In the entire day that I was playing, I got knocked out of top 8 in the first round, literally because I drew 2 dead hands in a row because of just bad luck. My opponent capitalized, he knew exactly what he was looking for, and he punished me for it, and there was no coming back. But up until that point, all day, I drew exactly the arrows that I needed, I drew exactly the cards that I needed when I needed them, and it was all because of Death Dealer, and a few other things as well, but we'll get on to it. So, we'll move through the rest of the gear. For any other Azalea players in the past, this will be of no surprise at all. We play Skullbone Crosswrap on the head. So Skullbone Crosswrap has a once per turn action that has go again. It says to turn your face down card in your arsenal face up, and you get the opt 1. It's Opt in this deck has the same value as if you were playing Wizard. It gives you information to better make decisions going forward. If you are blind Azalea-ing off the top, you're doing something wrong, or else you're caught in a bad spot. You should have plenty of opportunities to opt. You should know exactly what's coming off the top of your deck, so you're never blind Azalea-ing. I think I did it once in the entire day of playing the whole Road to Nationals, and I got really lucky. I got an endless arrow off the top, but all the rest of the day I was going on it with all the information that I needed to make sure that that Azalea would provide way more value. For the chest piece, it is Fendel Spring Tunic for the sole reason that once every 3 turns we get a free resource and we can use it to pay for Death Dealer, and it makes our entire turn free because then the card that we draw off Death Dealer and put in the RO one will pay for the RO. It's fantastic. You pay for turns twice and then you get the third one free. That's like fantastic value in Flesh and Blood. The hands is the Bullseye Bracers. The Bullseye Bracers is essentially just a free reload into your arsenal. If you have a hand that has all buffs and an RO and you want to go absolutely nuts, then Bullseye Bracers is the one for you because you don't have to pay anything for Death Dealer, even though that if you do, you can draw up. It's also used very situationally where if you Azalea a card off the top of your deck and it's a buff, then you can fire off the buff and then use the Bullseye Bracers to load on and get a +1. Yeah. And also, it's got Arcane Barrier. There's no point in running the Arcane hands, Null Rune hands, because we have a Ranger piece with it built in. And the feat, we run the Perch Grapplers. In the entire day that I was playing, I only activated Perch Grapplers once, and it was because I drew a hand that was full of resources. But yeah, the entire point of this deck is that you're going to fire off 1 arrow per turn. The only reason Perch Grapplers is here is because it blocks for 2. It's 2 extra life, that's all it is. As far as Arcane Barrier goes, we have absolutely no other gear because we don't have the resources to pay for it. We have Arcane Barrier 1 on the Skullbone Crosswrap. We have Arcane Barrier 1 on the Bullseye Bracers. AB2 built in is perfect. If we had AB3, we wouldn't be able to pay for it. So AB2 is exactly where we need to be with this deck. But let's move on to the main meat of the deck, and that is the RO selection. So in this deck, we run 27 ROs altogether, but we don't actually use all of those ROs in the deck itself. This is probably going to be the longest part of the video because this is the part that I wrestled with the most in order to, get this deck to actually function the way that I wanted, but it did exactly what I wanted to do based on the RO selection and a few other select cards, so we'll get into it. Ultimately, the first RO that we play is the reason why I play the deck, and that is Red in the Ledger. Red in the Ledger, it's Azalea Specialization, which means Lexi ain't getting her hands on this. And it says, if Red in the Ledger hits a hero, they can't play or activate more than 1 action during their next turn. Now, Dominate is something that I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with, because if I dominate a turn and I can get that damage to go through, then my opponent can only defend with 1 card from hand. They can use some gear and arsenal defense reactions if they want, but ultimately it means that they are guaranteed to be left with 3 cards in hand and potentially be able to take the tempo back off me so that I can't continue the onslaught. This card lets me have my cake and eat it, because I can have my Dominate and I can limit them to only 1 action per turn. If it's a wide hero, fantastic, it's great, but yeah, this is the card that is the point of running the whole deck. The downside is that it's a Majestic and it only comes in red, but we've solved that problem, and I'll get to it after we talk about the ROs. The next RO choice that I have in here are 3 Battering Bolts. It is the only RO in here that costs 2, however, I feel that it's worth it for the matchup that it's used in. It's a 2 for 6. It says when Battering Bolt hits a hero, they reveal their hand and discard all cards other than action cards. They then lose 1 life for each card discarded this way. So, again, there's a very specific use case for this, but we'll move on. We'll go through all the ROs, and then I'll talk about my thinking and reasoning as to why I chose all these ROs. Next, we have 3 Fatigue Shot. Red, it's a 1 for 5, and it says when Fatigue Shot hits a hero, the base attack of their first attack action card they play during their next turn is halved, rounded up. So if they're coming in and their first attack the next turn is coming in for 10, well, now it's only coming in for 5. So it essentially just cuts the entire first attack in half on the next turn. So the next RO that I have on here, I have 3 copies of Hamstring Shot. Hamstring Shot is a 1 for 5. Again, it says if Hamstring Shot hits a hero, their first attack during their next turn costs an additional resource. It is essentially Frostbites before a Frostbite came into the game, which is nice. It can really annoy some other decks, but ultimately it's not my favorite RO, but it does have a place. 1 for 5 is nothing to be snuffed at. Next, we have 3 copies of Remorseless. Again, it's a 1 for 5. You're going to hear that a lot. And it says, if Remorseless is put into your arsenal face up, until end of turn, it gains defense reactions can be played from arsenal to Remorseless's Chain Link. This is brilliant because I didn't like Dreadbore because it stopped defense reactions from hand, which is where they are suboptimally played from. Instead, I wanted to stop them from the arsenal because if I'm trying to dominate turns, the arsenal and the equipment is the way to get around a dominated attack. This turns off the arsenal, meaning that if they want to supplement the block that they're going to do from hand, they're going to have to do it by breaking gear. Remorseless is great, and it also has another effect on the card that says if Remorseless hits a hero until the end of their next turn, whenever they pay an action card, they lose a life. Adding that extra life cost really makes some decks play way safer than they would, or if they feel like they want to take tempo back, then they can try to do so, but they're going to be using their life in every single action card that they play. This actually won me the first game because I managed to get Remorseless through, dominated, and it had knocked the opponent down to 4 health, and they just knew that there was no way that they were going to get a turn out of that, and they just played 4 cards and killed themselves. It was quite funny. But anyways, the next arrow that we have in here is Endless Arrows. This is the last arrow that I added into this deck because it doesn't have an on-hit effect. The whole point of this deck is to try and dominate the on-hit effects to guarantee that they go through, and the damage will kind of come as a result of that. But Endless Arrow is a 0 for 4. If it hits, it goes back into your hand. Ultimately, that means you're guaranteed an arrow for your next turn. If you burn your whole hand on a turn, it guarantees you're going to have something to put into Arsenal. Also, it's really annoying getting hit with the same arrow over and over and over again from your opponent's side of the board, so there's that kind of psychological game going on. But also, it is a 0-cost arrow if you're really tight on resources. Maybe you've had to block out some, big turn from before. A 0-cost arrow with the bracers that you can break to just pop it into your arsenal becomes a 0 for 5 arrow. I mean, even coming in for 5 damage with no dominate for free is still a pretty good turn if you find yourself in that position. Next, we have 3 red and 3 yellow Sleep Darts. Now, Sleep Dart is 1 for 5 in red and 1 for 4 in yellow, and it says if Sleep Dart hits a hero, they lose all card effects and activated abilities until the end of their next turn. Essentially treat the hero card as if the text box is empty. The whole reason why the people decide to play a hero is to get access to their cards and to get access to their ability. Turning off some heroes' abilities can really mess with some decks out there. It's the only reason why that I have it on here in red and yellow. I toyed with putting Fatigue Shot yellow in, but I cut them for Sleep Dart yellow because I felt like I was getting more value out of Sleep Dart. I felt like the Fatigue Shot was more situational than Sleep Dart, so that's the reason why that there's red and yellows. And the last arrows that I run are 3 blue copies of Ridge Rider Shot. It's a 0 for 2. This is a last chance saloon arrow. It is another 0-cost arrow, so it's kind of in the same vein as Endless Arrow. If you're firing a Ridge Rider Shot, you are caught in a situation that you don't want to be in. But ultimately, it's the card effect is the reason why I chose this as the 1 blue arrow that I'll include. It says, if Ridge Rider Shot is put into your arsenal face up, then opt 1. This pretty much gives you a last chance saloon of putting this into your arsenal face up using Death Dealer to opt 1 and hopefully top deck an arrow off the top that you can swap out and give it dominate. It has worked for me in the past. It has not worked for me in the past, but also Ridge Rider Shot, if you can buff it twice, is coming in for 8, and for a blue coming in for 8, that's not the worst thing in the world. I have actually Azalea this off the top into the arsenal sometimes in order to play 2 or 3 buffs and then fire this off for a pretty big damage. No on-hit effects, but still pretty big damage. Anyways, that is the arrows. Now, I'm not going to move these a second because I feel like the other cards on here are sort of to be thought of in the same vein as arrows, but ultimately these are the reason why that the deck works, because anyone who has played Ranger will know exactly what I mean by you draw a dead hand and you're just left there sitting at your opponent going, guess I'll die now. But these cards are the cards that I included in this deck to make this work. So the first one, again, is the other Azalea specialization. It's going to be of no surprise to anyone, is 3 copies of Knock the Death Whistle. So Knock the Death Whistle is an instant turn in this deck. It will turn anything that you have into a good turn. It is a 0-cost Ranger action with Go again. It says to search your deck for an arrow card, reveal it, and then shuffle your deck and put the arrow on top. Essentially, find whatever arrow that you want, shuffle up and put that arrow on top. And it also has reload. So even if you have, like, you know, defense reactions in your hand. You can't use your bow to put something in the arsenal. Reload allows you to put a card from your hand face down into your arsenal. Just essentially getting something from your hand, putting it down in the arsenal. Then the card that you searched for at the start on top, you can swap out with Azalea. It guarantees you can just find an arrow and dominate it. It is so good. It feels so good to use this and find whatever arrow that you need for that matchup. But it doesn't feel as good as the next cards that I have on here. This is the only inclusion from Uprising in this deck, and it is 3 yellow copies of Sift. So Sift is, as I say, it's the new Uprising card. I did run reds and yellows of this, but the yellows was the only one that I needed. I feel that yellows are better to run over red because I don't want it in my arsenal. But anyways, what it does is that it's a 0 cost action with Go Again. It says to put up to 3 cards from your hand on the bottom of your deck and draw that many cards. Essentially, it takes a bad hand and gives you another go, really. It's essentially a mulligan in a card. 99 times out of 100 when this ends up in my hand, I will pitch it for 2 resources. As I say, 2 resources is more than enough to pay for any turn in this deck. So it is essentially just an instant, you know, all the resources you need. But if it's in Arsenal, again, I've done something wrong. If it's in hand, then I only have 3 other cards in my hand, which means that the yellow one is perfect. I can play this, dump the whole hand on the bottom, draw 3 cards, and hopefully get what I need. The next cards that I have on here are the sole reason why that I decided ultimately to run this deck at Road to Nationals, and that is 6 copies of Memorial Ground. It is a generic instant from Monarch. I run 3 red and 3 yellow, and this is the reason why that in game 1 I dominated red in the ledger 7 times in a row. It essentially, this is a wildcard arrow. It is so good. The red one says to put a target attack action card with cost 2 or less from your graveyard on top of your deck, and the yellow one is with cost 1 or less on top of your deck. So these will be able to search out any arrow that's in here. The blues will only be able to search out Endless Arrows and Ridge Rider shots. It doesn't feel too good, but these will search any arrow that you have played. The second game that I played, I dominated 4 red in the ledgers in a row against Bolton. And then I drew a Knock the Death Whistle, and I got really worried, thinking, okay, I've just dominated 4 red in the ledgers in a row. All of them have hit, so they must be in my graveyard. Like, Knock the Death Whistle's gonna whiff. And I looked in my graveyard and found out that I had fired off the same red in the ledger 4 times because I played 3 Memorial Grounds. This is unbelievable. This card is an honorary ranger card in my opinion. It is the reason why that this deck now is more than playable, and I will be playing this deck again and again and again because it feels so good to get in that cycle. So essentially what it is that you have your arrows in your bin, you play your Memorial Ground, put the arrow on top of your deck, use your Azalea to put it into Arsenal and fire it off, and it goes back into your bin. That's the cycle. If you need to block with an arrow, doesn't matter, because you block with an arrow, it goes into your bin, you play your Memorial Ground, get it back out, and away you go. And it's also the reason why that I lost the game in the top 8, but I'll talk about that at the end in the downsides of this deck. But ultimately, the way that I see Memorial Ground is that Knock the Death Whistle allows me to search for the arrows whenever they're in the deck, but Memorial Ground allows me to search for the arrows after I've used them. Essentially, this becomes 6 wildcard arrows, and these 6 cards allow me to guarantee, or nearly guarantee, that I'm going to find something that can get me an arrow. Since this is more than half of the deck, I'm pretty much gonna find one of these whenever I am, playing throughout a game. So now, the chances that I have to find something that I can dominate in a turn have gone way up because of this build. Anyways, let's move on to the next part of the deck, which is the buffs. And yeah, we'll see how it all kind of fits together from there. So let's start with the buffs here in this deck. The first one that I play are 3 red Nimbleisms. Now, the Nimbleisms are essentially just a 0 cost action with Go Again that says your next attack action card with cost 1 or less you play this turn gains +3. This covers nearly every arrow in the deck. The only one that it doesn't cover is the Dreadbore one that is cost 2 for 6 damage, but 6 damage is more than enough, it's fine. But yeah, Nimbleism actually took the place of Rain Razors. Rain Razors I don't think was made for Azalea, because I would much rather add 3 and let you know it's coming and dominate it so you can't do anything about it than sneak in an extra +2 at the end to try and make it go through. at the end of the day, if I'm coming in for an arrow for 11 dominate and I have a nimblism on the back of it, and you know that I have no attack reactions, that's still a lot of work and resources and gear that you have to burn to block all of that damage, so that's totally fine by me. But nimblism in this particular build feels way better to run than Rain Razor, so spoiler, there's no Rain Razors in this deck. Next is 3 red copies of Take Aim. Take Aim says that the next Ranger attack action card you play this turn gains +3, and it's free. All of these are free, none of them cost anything. And it has the reload keyword. Reload is very, very important, because if you don't have an arrow in your hand, you can't use the bow to put just any card in your arsenal. Essentially, Take Aim will allow you to put whatever you want from your hand face down into your arsenal. The best part about using the reload keyword to get something in there is that you can then use the Skullbone Crosswrap to turn it face up, and you can opt the top card of your deck. So essentially, every time I see reload, I just think, okay, I can just put some piece of trash from my hand face down in my arsenal and I get a free opt. So reload is great. There's a lot more cards in here that have reload as well, but we'll get to them. Next is 3 copies of Seek and Destroy. Seek and Destroy says your next arrow attack this turn gains +3, and if it hits a hero at the beginning of their next end phase, they discard all cards in their hand and destroy all cards in their arsenal. One thing that I noticed that a lot of people do whenever I get caught in the dominate cycle is that I'll dominate lots with red in the ledger. That's kind of my most safe go-to card to dominate. And I'll use Memorial Grounds to play them over and over and over and over again. Essentially what that means is that they're playing one action on their turn, and they can't do anything else. Their turn is going to end. Outside of playing instants and stuff, but it's fine. They're only going to really play one action per turn. What that means is that they are going to have to try and build up a hand one action at a time that can hopefully get them out of that cycle. Seek and Destroy resets that, because, for example, if you're playing against Bolton, Bolton can be drawn, attacking once and then drawing up the full hand and building up that big combo, or any other. I think Kano will do it as well, where he'll build up that combo to try and kill you in one big swoop whenever you whiff on an arrow or you don't dominate correctly or something. Seek and Destroy just completely kills that entire plan. If they are building up a combo in their hand and you get a Seek and Destroy on a dominated red in the ledger, then that is so good. It's going to hit, they're only going to have one action, and then all that work they did building up a hand, they just throw it all away. Seek and Destroy is fantastic. It will never be removed from this deck. Next is Release the Tension red. We have 3 red copies of Release the Tension. It says your next arrow attack this turn gains +3, and defense reactions can't be played from Arsenal as Chain Link. Fantastic. Can't play defense reactions from Arsenal. That is where defense reactions are going to be played from, so this just completely cuts off, as I said before, half of the ability that the hero has to block outside of their hand. Next, we play 6 copies of Read the Glide Path. So Read the Glide Path is probably one of my favorite buffs in this deck, because the red gives me +3 with Go Again, the yellow gives me +2, but they all allow me to opt one. It is not out of the realm of possibility to use reload to put something in your arsenal, and then you opt and off of the Skullbone Crosswrap, and then you can peek the top card of your deck. You don't like it, put it on the bottom, you play a Read the Glide Path, you opt, you don't like it, put it on the bottom, you play a second one, oh, you find an arrow, now you do the swap. It just feels great to have opt in here, because opt and reload go together to make the deck churn, and yeah, it feels fantastic to play this. Next, then we have 3 copies of Poison the Tips. Possibly, this is my least favorite buff in here. I have thought about replacing it with some other yellow as well. However, having your hero discard a card can sometimes work well, and it also has the reload keyword. I needed more cards with reload. It felt like whenever I was playtesting without this, and I had some extra Take the Aims in, some extra Release the Tensions in, it didn't feel quite right, because it felt like a turn that I didn't have an arrow in hand to put in my arsenal. It felt like I would have liked more reload, and so this is where Poison the Tips came in. The discard a card from your hand if it hits is nice, because that's the whole point of it. Poison the Tips says until the end of turn, arrows you control gain. If it hits a hero, they discard a card. That's nice, but it's not the best in the world if you're red in the ledger in them and dominating them and all that other stuff, and yeah, it's the reload. It's here. It's essentially a zero cost go again with reload. So let's move on then to the last section of the deck, and that is the defense reactions. This deck defends very poorly, and the whole point is that you're going to be soaking up essentially any vanilla damage. I always go into the Azalea matchups in my head thinking I'm here not to block damage, I'm here to block on-hit effects, because on-hit effects are going to be the thing that's going to destroy my entire cycle. If you're coming at me with an Enlightened Strike for 7, and yeah, okay, I'll just take 7, that's fine, because I'm just going to dominate an arrow back for 7 with an on-hit effect, and so that's a fine trade. But if you're coming at me with like 4, and if it hits, draw a card, and all this other stuff, then yeah, I'll probably block that out more because I don't want the on-hit effect to go through. So this is a game of on-hit effects, not a game of damage. And so let's dive in and see exactly how we try to stop at least a small amount of that damage. So the first defense reactions that I'll show off are not going to be any surprise to anyone. We run 3 copies of Fate Foreseen Red. It's a 0 cost for 4. Defense reaction, it says Opt 1. As I said before, Opt is fantastic in this deck. It allows me to set up future turns. So yeah, Opt is great. Next, again, you're probably already saying it to your screen, is 3 copies of Red Sink Below. Because again, it allows me to dump a card from my hand on the bottom of my deck, draw another card, and so again, it just keeps that cycle going so that we can find arrows or arrow equivalents. Next, since 0 cost 4 defense reactions are things that people seem to like a lot, that was sort of the mindset that I had when I was putting together the defense reactions. I thought, yeah, well, Ranger has one of those for themselves, and it's 3 red take covers, and it has reload, which is great. I put this in Arsenal, and it feels fantastic to have it sitting in Arsenal because I can fire it off and then just put another card in my Arsenal, and I'm set for doing Azalea funniness on the next turn. If it's in hand and I have an empty Arsenal, it doesn't feel as good because that's like card from your hand and your Arsenal, only 2 cards left, but still, it's okay. Reload is key here, and it's a 0 for 4. It's great. Next is Springboard Somersault. I run 3 copies of Springboard Somersault. It only comes in yellow, which is fine. 99 times out of 100, I'm pitching this to pay for a turn. But if I put this in Arsenal and I defend with it for 4, great. That's no problem. That feels fine. If I have enough resources in hand and it's not doing anything for anybody, I'll play it from hand and defend for 2. Defending for 2 is better than defending not at all. So yeah, this does have a place in here, and I usually get 4 out of it more than I get 2 out of it. The downside is that if you do play it from Arsenal, there's nothing going back into your Arsenal in order to do Azalea stuff. However, yeah, that's why all the other cards have reload, so that shouldn't really be a problem. And yeah, the last card is one that I'm back and forward on, which is 3 red Sigils of Solace. I put this in here because I wasn't 100% sure on how the deck would run, and I was kind of worried about fatigue matchups. I did try to put... Oh, the name of the card escapes me now. It's a card where you can put like 3 actions from your graveyard back into your deck for the fatigue matchup, but it didn't feel too good because I was dying before then, or else I was winning before then. So Sigils just gave me more life, but at the same time, I'm thinking of putting, after speaking with some friends, thinking of putting on a yellow that blocks for 3 instead. Because essentially that's going to get me the same 3 life if I decide to block with it, but it's going to give me a bit more utility than just having an instant. This goes against the archetype that I was talking about blocking on-hit effects, not blocking damage, because this doesn't do that. If you come in for 4 with an on-hit effect and I block some of it and heal, I still take the on-hit effect because I'm still being hit. So yeah, in my opinion, this is the first card that's going to get dropped in place of something else. So that's the deck, but we're not finished yet. We're going to lay the arrows out again, and we're going to go through and talk about exactly how that this deck should be sideboarded. So here we are. Here's all the arrows laid back out again. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different arrow combinations here all together. The reason why I left the sigils here is to remind myself to say, take the sigils out of the deck. They are not used for anything. Get them out. They do nothing for nobody. I hated using them whenever they were on there and I drew it. I felt like I didn't want it. Yeah, that needs to be replaced. But anyways, the optimum number of arrows to run in this deck is 6 of these. You essentially choose 6 of these 3 for a total of 18 arrows. Any more, and I feel like I was getting too many and I wasn't being able to buff enough. Any less, and I felt like I was drawing arrows, or I wasn't drawing enough arrows and I was drawing too much of other stuff and I was whiffing turns all over the place. But essentially what you do in this deck is, I've purposefully laid this out, the Endless Arrows and the Ridge Rider shots are included in every single build of this deck. It doesn't matter who you're going up against. Of your 6 Arrow choices, you actually don't have 6, you have 4 choices, because Endless Arrow and Ridge Rider Shot will always be in here. Endless Arrow, because it can recycle itself, and it's a 0 cost, which means if you're caught on the back foot, maybe you've got some frostbites you got to pay for or something, or there's a channel lake out that's kind of eating up all your resources. 0 cost arrows are fantastic. Ridge Rider Shot is on here because every time I draw it, I'm like, great, I have enough resources to pay for anything. My goodness, I drew one of these and a yellow, and I even managed to fire off my Breeze Rider boots to fire off 2 arrows in a turn. Who thought that could be a thing? But yeah, Ridge Rider Shot and Endless Arrow are always in the deck. They are auto includes, so which means that out of this package of these arrows here, you choose 4 of these arrows to include, or 4 packs of 3 to include as your other arrows. So we'll get the easy ones out of the way first. Battering Bolt is there for Dorantia. I can't really think of any other reason why that it would be in there, except for Dorantia. If this hits Dorantia, you are golden, because Dorantia is only going to be left with the non-attack actions, and all of the attack reactions are completely gone. It feels fantastic to have one of these dominated and hit Dorantia, and then watch like 2 or 3 attack reactions come out, because it also means that you know for a fact that you're not going to be getting attack reacted unless it's an arsenal, which means at worst you're going to have 1 attack reaction to worry about. So yeah, this is the Dorantia Arrow. Other than that, drop it from the deck because it's not needed. So ultimately then what we have here is we have a choice to make based on some kind of simple steps. I don't really have sideboards for every single hero, because ultimately it's a broader sense of criteria that you're looking to apply here. Ultimately what you're looking to ask yourself is my opponent looking to go wide, or are they trying to hit me like tall, like one big massive swing? If they're looking to go wide, you'll choose Red in the Ledger, and you'll choose Remorseless guaranteed, because Red in the Ledger will limit them to only 1 action, which will completely kill any wide turn that they have. And Remorseless will make them have to spend 1 life for every action that they do. If you're going up against Katsu and he wants to attack you 4 times, no problem, buddy. You're going to have to pay 4 life to do so. Briar was another one that felt really good to play this against, because it meant that Briar, every time that they played a non-attack action and attack action in order to do Runeblade stuff, they had to essentially lose a life for every one of those. So yeah, for the wide package, this is what you want. Also, for the wide package, Hamstring Shot, because even though it's not as good as the other 2, it's still okay, because it's essentially a Frostbite. It's going to make them pay 1 extra for that first action that they play, or the first attack that they play, I'm sorry. So yeah, Hamstring Shot is normally the 3rd that I include for any hero that likes to play lots of chain links or play lots of cards. The final one, if I'm not really feeling Hamstring Shot, I'll usually include Sleep Darts if the hero uses their hero text a lot, which is essentially most heroes. So for example, if you're going up against Briar, this is great because no embodiment of lightnings, no embodiment of earths. If you're going up against Bravo, like old Bravo, not Starvo, still glad he's gone, then you don't have to worry about attacks getting dominated out of nowhere. Essentially, if your opponent has a text box, consider using this unless it's Dash, because this is the most useless hero in the world against Dash. No, don't play it against Dash. Fatigue Shot is for the tall matchups. If I'm going up against Bravo, or if I'm going up against Oldham, essentially just Guardians or Brutes that want to hit me once but hit me really big, I'll drop Red in the Ledger and I'll drop Remorseless, because these cards against Bravo do not mean a thing. Bravo and Oldham and Reinar having to pay 1 extra life for something when I hit them with Remorseless, they don't care. Red in the Ledger, limiting them to 1 action doesn't matter, because more than likely they're only going to play 1 action anyway. So yeah, these do not matter in that matchup. Instead, Fatigue Shot is what comes in those matchups, because Fatigue Shot, as I mentioned back in the arrows section, it halves the base attack. So if I'm playing against Bravo decides he's going to pay the extra 2 and somehow pay for Crippling Crush, so it's coming in for like 11 Dominate with a Crush effect. Well, now it's only coming in for 6 Dominate, and I can block with 1 card from hand, and the Crush effect doesn't happen. I take a small amount of damage. Great. Fatigue Shots, I will cycle these all day against the Guardian. Have Fatigue Shots coming in for 11 Dominate, 8 Dominate, all day long. No problem, and I'll happily just take half of the damage off of their big attack. Hamstring Shots can be nice against decks that have to pay a lot for things. But again, Sleep Dart is kind of nice. If you think about it as well, Sleep Dart is also good in the tall matchup because if you're playing against Rhinar, it can turn off their text box so that they can't intimidate you by discarding stuff. Ultimately, as I say, these arrows here, except Doranthea, because that's the automatic Doranthea include, these arrows will be what you'll choose your extra 4 from in order to make up your 18 arrows. Now, again, as I mentioned before, Knock the Death Whistle will allow you to search for whatever arrows that you actually want. So, you know, you have Red in the Ledger in there, you know you're just going to try and pull that out because that's the best in this matchup, or you're against Bravo and you're afraid he's going to do Bravo stuff, so maybe getting some fatigue shots out early will feel better. So Knock the Death Whistle allows you to do that and allows you to guarantee to dominate it. As I said, Sift, so that you can find these arrows better whenever they're in there, and all the Memorial Grounds so that once you do get one of them off, like if I fire a fatigue shot against Bravo, now I have essentially 9 red fatigue shots in the deck because all of these Memorial Grounds will find them. They will all also guarantee that they're going to get dominated off of Azalea, which means at least 6 dominated red fatigue shots and 3 red fatigue shots in the deck. That's the reason why that this works. So let's talk about some of the bad matchups. The bad matchups are, for lack of a better term, other Azaleas or Wizards. That's essentially it. Everything else feels like a perfectly balanced matchup that you can control because most people aren't worrying about Azalea, and so because of that, most people aren't used to playing against Azalea, and so yeah, I didn't really feel like there was a bad matchup. There's no one else in my local meta playing Kano, so I didn't have to worry about getting killed whenever I played a non-attack action. And also, there was no one else playing Azalea, so I didn't have to worry about, you know, me getting caught in a Red in the Ledger cycle and having to try and work my way out of that. So yeah, ultimately, that's the bad matchup. You're also, the other thing that's going to lose you games is going to be bad card draws, but unfortunately that's just a product of playing a trading card game, is that sometimes you're just going to draw bad hands. I think that this is the most work that I can figure out right now to reduce that. As I said, I only drew 2 bad hands the entire day, and both times were turn 1 and turn 2, and that's how I died. But yeah, I think that between the Memorial Grounds, the Sifts, the Knock the Death Whistles, and the fact that you'll be running a 63 card deck with all of these on there, you'll have more than enough resources to find the arrows that you need, and you'll be able to dominate them in order to kill your opponent. Anyways, that was my Azalea deck list. I didn't see myself doing an Azalea deck list whenever I started this channel, but hey, here we are. It makes a big change from Kano, but ultimately she is Kano without wizard stuff, playing off the top of her deck with a bow and arrow, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, let me know what you think of this deck list. So let me know, would this make you consider playing Azalea? Would this make you consider coming off Lexi and coming over to Azalea? I know that a lot of people think Azalea is like a bad Lexi, but I think that this at least shows that she can be played different in a way that Lexi can't be played. And yeah, also let me know what changes you would make to the deck. As I said, there is some space on there with the 3 Sigil of Solaces that I threw over to that side of the room somewhere. So there is room in here for other cards to be used. So let me know what you think. If you would change the arrows, if you would include some other things, if you would change the ratios or the balance. I would love to hear your suggestions because I'm definitely going to be playing this. Anyone that follows me on Twitter will know that I talk about Flesh and Blood all the time, and I live tweeted my entire day, so you probably seen this coming from all of my tweets on the day talking about Azalea craziness. But yeah, if you don't want to leave a comment and you want to chat to me, then Twitter is definitely the best place to do so. But yeah, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time.